What's up YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me today as always. If you like what you see here, do be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and there's plenty more content on the way. So I have for you guys today an unscheduled If I Could Only Have One video. And it's unscheduled because my good buddy 1776er Bus challenged me to make this video. He just put out a video a couple of weeks ago looking at the CZ P-10C and the Steyr M9-A1. And he challenged me to, in this particular format, take a look at these guns and see who comes out victorious. So again, this is the If I Could Only Have One series, and in this series I take a look at two guns, whether very similar or in some cases very different, and I compare and contrast the two guns looking at things like specs, although not a deep dive. We'll look at features, we'll talk a little bit about value, of course we'll be wheeling and shooting along the way, we'll take a look at the triggers, and at the end I will announce a winner. Now here's the thing, both of these guns are absolutely fantastic. Just because there's a winner doesn't necessarily mean one is really better than the other. This is all merely opinion. I like to take a step back, look at my collection, and challenge myself and say, if I could only keep one of these guns, which one would it be? So that brings us to today, and again we are taking a look at this CZ P-10C, an awfully popular firearm right now, and the Steyr M9-A1. So these guys are good to go and unloaded. So from a spec standpoint, now I find that the CZ P-10C for the most part is really just a little bit bigger than the Steyr. From a length standpoint, the P-10C 7.3 inches versus 6.9 inches on the Steyr. However, the Steyr is just a little bit longer, and I do have a flat base magazine. Actually, no I don't. I do have the, sorry, the +2 magazine in there right now. So it's going to be just a tiny bit taller than the P-10, but even with a flat magazine, still standing just a little bit taller. The barrel length is almost exactly the same, roughly at 4 inches, the CZ being just a little bit more. Now from a width standpoint, the CZ does stand just a little bit wider at 1.26 inches versus 1.2 inches on the Steyr. From a weight standpoint, both of these firearms do sit at 26 ounces, so neither one is lighter or heavier than the other, which is kind of interesting because of the different ways these two guns are put together. And of course, I'll be going over that in just a little bit more detail. From a magazine perspective, the CZ does come with two metal or steel 15-round magazines out of the box. And then the Steyr also comes with two magazines. Now, there are a couple of different ways to potentially get this. Now, this happens to have a +2 base plate in it, and this particular one came with several magazines, 2 +2s, and then a standard flat magazine, although most Steyrs just come with two magazines. So, of course, both are striker-fired firearms, just like you would expect from these. From a feature standpoint, we're going to take a few moments and talk about the CZ, at least from a frame standpoint, and the grip. And a lot of people have said that the CZ grip is not necessarily overly aggressive, but certainly a little bit aggressive. And when you shoot for a period of time with this firearm, after a while, you are going to take some of that grip with you when you leave. Although, again, I find it to be very comfortable. It really isn't a problem whatsoever. Now, it is an adjustable grip. It does come with 3 different back straps. You just pop out a roll pin, and you're good to go, and you can change your back straps. So from a texture standpoint, again, pretty aggressive on the back and the front, and more subdued squares on the side. From an ergonomic standpoint with the grip, I find the CZ to be exceptionally comfortable. They've done a really good job of not only undercutting under the trigger here and making this very contoured and very scalloped, but then the same up here in the back of the frame. Although the one thing, and I've mentioned it before, because of the back of the gun here and the way it is molded, it can potentially kind of beat up your thumb knuckle, whatever you want to call it, a little bit. Although it's not bad, and at the end of the day, it really doesn't take away from the gun. Now, they did continue the grip texture up a little bit further on the frame, and that's great for reference points, whether it be for your thumb or for your finger there as well, and I think that's a really nice touch from CZ. Now, of course, it does have your accessory rail for lights, lasers, grenade launchers, which is great. And from an operations standpoint, now, one nice thing about the CZ, it is fully ambidextrous out of the box, not only the slide lock, slide release, but also the magazine release. I've noted in previous videos, at first, both of these functions were just, they were pretty firm and pretty hard to operate, although after time, it has certainly loosened up just a little bit. Now the Steyr does things just a little bit differently all the way around. One thing that's really notable about the Steyr, not only is the grip angle, and it's a relatively extreme grip angle, even just a little more so than Glock. So if you have a tendency to prefer 1911 style grip angles or Smith & Wesson grip angles, that sort of thing, it may take a little while to get used to something like this, but once you do, I think you'll find that the grip is actually pretty extraordinary. Now I noted in my original video on the Steyr that I feel like the grip almost looks a little bit cheap, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't seem to have a lot of outstanding texture on it. It's got a little bit of texture on the sides, and it's got some kind of ribs on the back and the front straps. However, once you put it in your hand, it really just molds to your hand, and I love the way the Steyr feels. I mean, it just feels really good in hand, and so they've done a really good job of undercutting the trigger guard, and also making it very scalloped up here on the under part of the back of the frame. So again, you can just get incredibly high on this gun, and it sits very low. Now the CZ also sits low as well. So one isn't necessarily better than the other, but certainly doing it just a little bit differently. From an operations standpoint, the Steyr is not ambidextrous. In fact, I have not been able to find anywhere where it mentions that the magazine release is switchable. And if you know that it does, please be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know about that. But Steyr certainly doesn't come right out and say it. And the same with the slide lock slide release. It is not ambidextrous out of the box. Now you do get an accessory rail for your lights, lasers, grenade launcher, so not sacrificing that attribute to the CZ, which is really nice. But again, from an overall frame standpoint, both guns are fantastic. They just do it a little bit differently. Now, from a slide standpoint, once again, each gun doing things just a little bit differently. The P-10C does have serrations both forward and back. And one thing I've noted about the P-10, I think it's a fantastic looking gun, and the slide is definitely a part of that because they've done a really good job of contouring the slide and kind of making it stand out among its peers just a little bit. It reminds me a lot of maybe a P-07 or a P-09, that sort of thing. I just really like the way that looks. Now, from a sight perspective, it does come with metal sights out of the box. Now, these are the phosphorescent or glowy sights. They do gather or charge light after a period of time, and they will glow for a while. Now, that's fantastic at the range, what have you. However, if you're concealed carrying or it's home defense, they might not have an opportunity to charge. So, to me, it's a little bit more perhaps gimmicky, but it's better than nothing, and at least they are steel, and there is a ledge for one-handed manipulations, which is great. Now, the bummer is there isn't a lot of aftermarket support. I believe CZ has a couple of different options for night sights now for the P-10, but that's about it. Hopefully other manufacturers will be jumping on that before entirely too long. Now the Steyr also does things just a little bit different. Now it does have back serrations, and these are great serrations. They certainly do the job. It does not have forward serrations. I believe the longer slide version of this does, but we're stuck with just the back. Most people don't really mind. It's not a big deal, but I think it's kind of a convenience if nothing else. But once again, it's a nice contoured slide. I think even though it's a little bit more blocky, it reminds me of another type of firearm out there. I won't mention the name. It's a little bit more reminiscent of that, but at least they've contoured it just a little. From a sight perspective, here's something that is very different about the Steyr. Now you'll notice that the Steyr has what are called trapezoidal sights, and certainly very unique. They are steel. Now it takes some time to get used to these sights, especially at the range, but man, I'll tell you, once you get used to them, they are actually quite efficient, and it's really easy to pick up your sights because there's a fairly good size front sight right there, which is nice, but again, it takes a little time to get used to. Now, unfortunately, there isn't really much of a ledge for one-handed manipulations, which is too bad, but certainly still very usable sights. One thing I've noted and continue to say, I really wish Steyr would come out with a night sight version of this. I know that would be difficult from a tritium perspective, especially with something this big, but some way to be able to figure that out, I think would be really, really cool and just enhance this gun quite a bit. So that's it from a spec and a feature standpoint. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the triggers and of course, obviously some shooting, but at the end, I will be announcing a winner. So stay tuned. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that footage at the range. So from a shooting perspective, both of these guns are a lot of fun to shoot. Once again, they do it just a little bit differently, especially because of the way the grip and the ergos on the Steyr present it versus the CZ P-10C. But both are fantastic. Took a little while to warm up to both, and that's kind of the case almost always with shooting. But once I did, I was able to really dial in both of these, and they both shot well. So I was pleasantly surprised. I can't necessarily give a leg up to either one of these, because not only from a function standpoint they both function flawlessly, but from a shooting perspective they were both accurate and a lot of fun to shoot. So that makes this this video a little bit more challenging. Let's go ahead and take a look at the triggers and see how these guys stack up. Now the P-10 has been touted this year as one of the better, if not one of the best triggers on the market. I don't know if I'd go necessarily that far, and of course your mileage may vary there. However, I will say that the P-10 has done a very good job. Now it does have the safety lever or dingus in it, as you would expect from a lot of the competition, of course. And it is molded to be relatively flat, which definitely gives it a leg up, again, amongst a lot of its competition there. So from an uptake standpoint, it's incredibly smooth. Now this gun has pretty close to 1,000 rounds in it at this point, so it is cleaned up a little bit, certainly from the beginning, but you definitely have a very smooth uptake, and once you get to your wall, it is a fantastic break. Very crisp, very clean. And then our reset is very short, and it's audible and it's tactile, and then we go out to the start. So I'll do this one more time. There's your uptake, again, very clean. There's your break. And there's your reset and back out to the start. So from a trigger perspective, the CZ has definitely done a good job. Now in the beginning, a lot of people were saying, and I was too, that the trigger was maybe not quite as outstanding as some of the very early reviewers with their pre-production models were saying. I have to say though, now that there are definitely some rounds through this gun, I think it is coming into its own, and it's getting a little bit closer to what I think those guys were perhaps experiencing with those pre-production models. Now the Steyr trigger, again, does things just a little bit differently. The first thing to notice, it's a pretty beefy trigger, and 1776 noted the same thing, and that can be a real plus for this. Now once again, it does have the safety dingus in it, although it's presented just a little bit differently, but that doesn't take away or add to the gun at all. So from an uptake standpoint, there's very little uptake there. I mean, that's it. It's got a very short amount of travel, and it's extremely clean for sure. And then we've got our break, and it's not quite as audible and not quite as crisp as the P-10, although it is very light and it is certainly tactile. I mean, it really is it's a good trigger for sure. And on our reset, I don't know if you heard that. It's a pretty quiet reset. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. So there's your uptake, there's your break. I'm going to be quiet here. That was it. So from a reset standpoint, I have to give a leg up to the P-10. The P-10 definitely has a more tactile, audible reset. However, I've found with the Steyr, especially when shooting, it doesn't seem to matter all that much. And I don't know if it's because of the size of the trigger, how smooth it is. This trigger can definitely be run, and it can be run very quickly. So that, and if you've seen any of my shooting, you know I really prefer that. So I like the trigger quite a bit. I'd like a little bit more reset for sure, but at the end of the day, it's a good trigger. So here we come to the end of the video, and again, it's an if I could only have one, so I have to come up with a winner, and I have to say, this may be the most challenging video I've done, and certainly unexpected. Wasn't really planning on doing it, but it's actually been a lot of fun to put together, but it's caused me a little bit of anxiety because it's hard for me to choose between these two. Both of these guns are absolutely fantastic, and I don't think you could go wrong with either one. But they do things very differently. From an ergonomic standpoint, with a slightly more aggressive grip, but not quite as exaggerated of an angle on there. And then the fantastic trigger on the P-10, as well as the overall looks and what I believe to be very good fit and finish. Now, I know some people have struggled with a few of these. Remember, it's a freshman offering, so there's some kinks probably to work out with this. But by and large, this has been an extraordinary gun to shoot and just have a lot of fun with, and also make videos with, to be honest with you. However, the Steyr has also been quite a standout hit, and I wasn't really planning on getting a Steyr or anything, but 1776 said, you've got to give it a try, and I'm so glad I did, because it's been a very unique experience, especially because of the ergonomics and the trapezoidal sights. it just presents things a little bit differently. It isn't really better than the P-10, it's just a different feel altogether. But if I have to choose a winner, and again, here's where it becomes very challenging, it's tough because the Steyr is a lot of fun to shoot. The sights are different, they're a little weird, and they're a lot of fun to get used to, and the ergonomics are fantastic. But I have to say, I think CZ really hit a home run out of the box with the P-10C. Now, if you've watched a lot of my videos, especially the If I Could Only Have Ones, the CZ has won almost all of them. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a CZ fanboy and I'm not a P-10 fanboy. I'm a gun fanboy. I love them all. But I do get excited when manufacturers put out a really good quality product. This, and I can think of several others as well, I won't mention on this video, that are fantastic products. They're consistently enjoyable to shoot. They feel good in the hand. They're good looking guns as well, and it's just a pleasure to shoot and to own these guns. The CZ definitely fits that bill. Now the Steyr, again, a fantastic gun, but at the end of the day, if I could only have one, I would choose the P-10C. Between the looks, the trigger, the ergonomics, and just everything that it has going for it, it has really impressed me from day one. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this. If you agree or disagree, or have other thoughts, have any experiences with these, any suggestions for other videos, I'm really looking forward to reading those. Be sure to join 1776 and Big Johnson Guns and Gear every Wednesday night for a gun chat. We do switch up duties, so you have to follow those other channels as well, but we talk about all things guns, so looking forward to that. And also be sure to check out Abaddon Apparel for all of your Second Amendment apparel needs, and also some really other fun things on that website. So check it out. Looking forward to seeing you again, and thanks for joining me today. Bye.